Wow. Cool. That's pretty cool. Mike, you ready to go?
We are, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I've got 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Manson,
Present.
Templin,
Here.
Lane,
Here.
Higgins,
Here.
Milburn,
Here.
Maddock,
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, all commissioners are present.
Outstanding. Item 3A, approve the planning commission agenda. Anyone have any changes or corrections to the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Seeing none. Agenda is approved. Approve the minutes of the planning commission meeting held for February 27th, 2024. Any additions or corrections to note?
Mr. Commissioner, I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I will abstain. I wasn't there. Next item is to disclose conflicts of interest. Anyone have any conflicts of interest of what's on the agenda tonight?
I have to excuse myself from item 7A. Chairman?
I as well will have to excuse myself on 7A.
I, 3, will excuse myself on 7A. That leaves enough to make a decision, I hope?
Just enough.
Okay, good. Anybody else on anything else before the planning commission tonight? Okay, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Anybody have anything to disclose?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll move into call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentations for informational purposes only, no action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. Would anyone like to address the planning commission?
I would if I could.
Yeah, we have an online participant, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Your name and address for the record?
I'm Jared Jerome, 8466 Frederick Drive. Also, Cedar Valley Forest at 29145 West 83rd Street. This is my first time attending this meeting. I heard there are potential plans on expanding the 83rd Street Road, so I just wanted to know where to find that and just any maybe updates on that.
I'll defer to
Sure.
Mike on that.
Yeah, happy to answer a question over there. If you, I think there's a resource on the city's webpage for the 83rd Street corridor study. If not, maybe in the chat you could leave me your contact information. I can get the information directly to you. The city is involved in a corridor study that looking at 83rd Street all the way through town, also Lexington Avenue as it goes down and connects to K10. In conjunction with the Mid-America Regional Council is mostly funding that corridor study. Some draft recommendations will be available next month for that. Largely, it's a high-level look at what type of improvement might be needed in the future based on future traffic volumes there. We have had one public open house session last month that was pretty well attended. And so now the consultants have been taking input from that and generating some concepts there. So the schedule for that is for the draft concept to be presented to the council probably sometime in May. Probably won't be either one of the April meetings. But then with a final recommendation sometime in June. So it's a pretty quick study in terms of that. It's really only been about 6 months. Again, it's a high level, and then it'll have some recommendations for further actions on that. You know, that the entire corridor is going to be a pretty substantial transportation improvement, so those things take a long time to plan. So that's the 2-minute rundown on that, and we definitely get you some more information, Jared. If you want it, if you're able to put that information into the chat, that would be the best way to your contact information.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay,
Very much appreciated. Thank you, guys.
sounds
Hey,
good.
one other comment on that. Is it likely that we're going to see that back at the planning commission, or is that going straight to council?
Yeah, no, planning commission will be involved. It will
Okay,
come to
so
planning
there will be a
commission.
chance for us to.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yep.
Mike, I assume that they're going to have the batch plants, lane expansions that they're having in their, incorporated in their plan, I assume?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the draft recommendations show exactly what's intended there, and what we've seen from that batch plan at Gardner Road. Yeah, the
Okay.
lane widening there. It's been
Thanks.
reflected, yep.
So we're still in call to the public. Anyone would like to address the planning commission meeting on, planning commission on items not on the agenda tonight? Feel free to approach the podium, give your name and address. Seeing none, I'll close the call to the public. Moving then to item 5A, public hearing item. Consider text amendment for revising electronic variable messaging boards, or EVMVs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are now at the public hearing stage for the text amendment for electronic video messaging boards. As you know, we've had a couple discussion items on this previously. I'm not going to go back through and talk about nits and, you know, the brightness of tablets and all those types of things. I think we covered all that in the previous meetings. Did want to follow up on the concerns that were raised by planning commissioners at the previous meeting. First of all, the width of the sign. When we had put together, I had put together the items for the ground sign on the this page right here, the one, the illustration. I didn't include, unintentionally, I didn't include the width for the monument sign, and I think there were some questions about should we put a hard width on that base of that sign. And what basically this does for the ground sign and for the monument sign is by setting the maximum height, and then it's proportionally based off of the width of the sign itself. It kind of helps give it the installer and the applicant some opportunities to change and vary the sign a little bit. One thing that I've found is doing this job, that it's good to give some of the applicants and also the designers a little bit of leeway and not tell them this is just, you know, absolutely this is what it's got to look like and these are the proportions. So it does give a little bit of flexibility there. And it also is exactly what's out of our sign ordinance. So really the only difference in what's in our sign ordinance and for an electronic variable messaging board is the application of the information and how it's displayed. And that's what we're covering primarily here. So I wanted to clarify that the monument sign, that information that's down at the bottom, the X and the Y, and the maximum height are now part of this public hearing process. The other thing that Commissioner Huggins brought up was some redundancy issues. And I was, when you first brought that up, I was thinking more about the engineering side of it. Where's the sign placed, and make sure the glare and things like that are not affecting drivers or lines of sight. And then Edgar pointed out there's also some redundancy on the location restrictions as far as where was that item? That it was basically saying the same thing about 2 or 3 times. So I did remove that from the ordinance itself. So those changes have been made, and then also the clarification on the sentence that dangled without the period, and that was supposed to have a period on the end, and it was just ending like that. So as we did have a discussion once about commas being important, periods are also important as well. So with that, I will stand for any questions you may have on this. I do think we had a pretty good discussion on this, and really the only significant change from the electronic variable messaging board is to get rid of the older terms, foot candles, things like that, and change it into a modern or an LED type situation that can be used throughout the city. So with that, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Brad, I'm still not seeing where, I get what you're saying, that the max on the height for the ground sign and the monument sign is 6 and 10 feet respectively. But when I look at the way that the x-axis reads, it just says 110% of the sign width. I guess where's I don't understand how the height and the width play off of each other. That's where I'm getting.
Yeah, and that's, you have to go back up and look at the language up above and then sort of look at it, because like the monument sign says, any sign whose base is greater than the width of the face of the sign. So the face of the sign is the sort of the regulator there. And now we could put in a maximum width, because in some ways you could say, yeah, somebody could put up maybe a 20-foot wide sign up there. But at some point, it does get regulated by, the width of the sign can't be too much higher than the face. So there's that. So you do have to go back and read the language up above and how it's applied to each, the ground sign and the monument sign. And because I didn't have that X, Y, and the 6-foot maximum height requirement, it kind of garbled up the width for the bottom. Now, we talked about in that, when I responded to your email, I mean, there is some value to putting a max width and just call it good.
I don't know if I'm making too much of it. I just thought, we specify height and display proportions, I guess. So that's where I was just looking for it.
And the reason I just copied it basically from our sign ordinance is because I didn't want the debate to be about the sign itself, because we've already established that within the code. It's really about, the brightness of the sign, and the dimming, and all the things that go with a LED type sign.
So if this is adopted, Brad, the only two type of signs that are permitted as EV, MB signs are ground signs and monument signs?
Well, that is correct, but we do allow and pole signs can have, like the Harps display, can have a EVMB also, but that's part of a pole sign application, so, and that's, once again, you're getting granted height waivers and things like that as well. So this is just more for, like what's in front of the bank on Lexington, so a similar process like that.
I mean, I'm okay with that being the conclusion, those are the only two you can have, but I would assume some people may want to put one on the side of a building.
Yeah, well, that's the way our ordinance is kind of written for our signs. Now, we don't allow them on signs of buildings. Now, we did have a provision in this initially, but that was more for windows, and it was kind of a strange kind of
Okay.
configuration.
Any other questions for Brad? Well, it's a public hearing item, so any members of the public would like to address this item, address the planning commission on this item, please approach the podium and give us your name and address. And no one online, I assume,
No one online.
except the giant P for Patrick?
Patrick, yes.
All right, I'll close the public hearing. The matters before the planning commission. Thoughts, concerns, comments?
I think it's pretty well written. We've seen it a couple of times. I don't really have any concerns with it, the way it's written. I think it should have a width limiter on it, but I'm not gonna hold that up if you guys don't agree.
I agree. I think it's fine as it's written. I just want to add a comment, as long as whatever changes we have will not affect existing.
No, I don't see any change. Those would be grandfathered in with their special use permit, so.
Okay.
So we are recommending approval to city council by a vote, so anyone would like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval of the electronic sign to city council for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Manson,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So Eric, now you've seen how sausage is made.
Alrighty then.
Item 5B, consider rezoning to R3, public hearing to consider rezoning to R3 for tracks at 9675 and 9735 Edgerton Road.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is a rezoning for aforementioned tracks. The applicant is BD Properties, and these are along Edgerton Road. We have, as you can see in the zoning map that's provided, rezoned a couple of tracks along Edgerton, and then also there's a larger tract on 103rd Street that have been rezoned to R3. And this is sort of a continuation of a trend that is enforced by our land use plan, our future land use plan of mixed use along 103rd and Edgerton Road, along with R3 and commercial in this area as well. As you know, that this area is kind of the hotbed for development now that Panasonic's there, Flint is there, and it's transitioning into an employment area, and it's losing its rural residential feel, even though there's quite a bit of rural residential acreage in that area that's not annexed into the city. Did go through the whole standard procedure, ad in the paper, sent out notification letters. I did get an email from a resident that's just to the south of these locations that are just concerned about being able to, the changes that are occurring out there, the building itself from Flint, the large warehouse distribution area, the rezonings that have happened. So it's in an area that's in a transition, obviously, and there's certainly still concern in that area, as you recall. From the Flint rezoning, there was quite a few folks that were concerned about this whole area and how things might be changing into the future. Right now, the property was recently annexed into the city, and it carries its county zoning of rural residential. Right now, it's undeveloped. It is just a grassy and mostly tree-covered tract. There is a stream that kind of cuts through the location itself, but there are no residents involved. Due north, there is a residential property, and then also to the south is, I did get an email from the property owner there that's concerned about just the changes in the area and how this may affect their quality of life, obviously. Going through the zoning compatibility factors, the first one is the character of the neighborhood. As I said, it's rural residential east of Edgerton Road, primarily, even though we have done some rezonings. The Flint development is well underway. Grading and paving and tilt-up construction has been, the tilt-up is complete. The paving now is just beginning to start. So that is happening as we speak. The road is nearly complete. The tie-in to 103rd is not finished yet. Utilities are going in along Edgerton Road as well. So this is what I talked about, the transition from just a rural residential area to an employment area. So that's kind of what's going on with the character of the neighborhood. The compatibility of the proposed zoning, once again, it's in a transition. There is a lot of rural residential in this area. But as you see from the existing zoning map in DeSoto, there's a lot of light industrial, there's R3, there's commercial, all sorts of uses around there. And once again, this is consistent with what the future land use plan is showing for this area. Suitability uses, which the property has been restricted under its existing zoning. The existing county zoning would not allow this type of development, but with the addition of the road or improvements to the road and utilities in the area, obviously that makes a significant change, and this is the first prime. This property has been brought up for any kind of change in rezoning. The length of time has remained vacant as zoned. Well, once again, it's because had been no utilities in the area, and now that it is a hotspot for development. These are the types of things that we'll be seeing more and more of, as you well know, in this area. The extent in which there's a need in the community for this types of zoning. When the whole Panasonic thing started, there was a lot of big push for, we need to get different types of housing. We did significant rezonings, and this is still part of the trend. I think things have kind of cooled off a little bit, as we thought that there would just be this massive wave of people needing to move to DeSoto. We even talked about, RV parks and all sorts of ways to try to accommodate this, but it does seem to be have absorbed into the system. And so there doesn't seem at my level to see the big push of now we need to have all this multifamily. But at some point, as employment starts and people gravitate and say, yeah, this is a place I want to continue working, the movement will happen. It might have not been as quick as we thought it was going to happen, but I still believe that this is going to be an important part of DeSoto's infrastructure as far as creating different types of housing opportunities into the future. I talked about utilities earlier. The utilities are in place or being constructed, so those are available. It's in Rural Water District 7's territory. We talked about the fire station a couple weeks ago or a couple meetings ago. The fire station will be able to serve this area quite well and will allow for safety of all the multifamily that we do have in this area. Traffic, things like that, the proximity to 103rd and Edgerton Road, the road network will be improved or is being improved. 103rd Street will still have some issues, 95th Street. There are some residents along that street will have some impacts as we don't have a particular plan to improve 95th all the way from Edgerton and really ultimately needs to go to Kill Creek. We know that's part of our process, things that we're trying to think about and how we're going to fund those things. So those residents in that area will have some potential negative impacts to their, notably with traffic in the area, but certainly there's already a traffic with a lot of construction vehicles, things like that as well. Overall, the impacts to the environment, a lot of these things, of course, will require a site plan, so they'll be mitigated with the processes that we go through for lighting plan, landscaping plans, traffic studies, stormwater, all those things will be brought before the Planning Commission for another round of approvals. Ultimately, with the economic impact, we do believe that this is a positive thing for DeSoto. As we've talked about many times, the Planning Commission, we need to have a variety of housing. And ultimately, with the R3 district, you can have the multifamily duplexes and single family. And a lot of the developers that we've talked to do show a mix of all of those. It's not just we're going to do 3-story apartments across the board. So they're well aware of the varieties of housing that staff has said, we don't just want multifamily. We want a mix of these types of homes along these areas or places where people can live. Overall, staff is recommending approval to the Planning Commission on this. It does meet the consistency with the comprehensive plan. It meets the future land use plan, and it is consistent with what we've been doing as far as rezonings to commercial R3 and M1 in this area. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Brett?
Yeah, is the applicant the owner of the property or is this a developer?
They are the owner, the applicant is the owner of the property. Now, I don't know of how they've engaged. I know they're working with Schlegel Engineering on this, but they own the property at this point.
Who is the developer?
Grant Reeves with BD Properties.
Okay. I guess they're not here tonight.
Apparently not, no.
While relevant, I suppose it's not terribly relevant to the zoning question. So,
Yeah, it's not required that they're at the meeting. It is rare that the applicant isn't here, but it's happened a few times, so.
other questions for Brett?
One of the questions I have, we always talk about the infrastructure's in place for all this stuff. Are we sure we have enough infrastructure to pass all this rezoning for all these things without any idea what's actually going on?
I don't know, Mike, I might defer to you as
I mean,
our engineering expert here.
we're rezoning for all this stuff, but at what point do we understand that we have enough capacity to put in what we're actually approving for?
Yeah, I think the test you have to ask yourself is, of the uses that are allowed in the proposed zoning district, considering all of those uses, but maybe not the extreme example, is it reasonable to make a determination that infrastructure won't be a significant barrier or hindrance, or infrastructure won't be unduly negatively impacted if the property develops in accordance with our rules in this zoning district? So that's typically what you do. So for all the rezonings we've ever done before, industrial tends to be the hardest question on that. R3, you know what the general density is for that type of use. You can be reasonably assured in this case with a brand new Edgerton Road with its extreme proximity to K10 with 103rd Street going, that the traffic impacts would be, if there are any, could be mitigated with, certain improvements, but essentially no improvements to what's there now. You could say the same thing for the sewer improvements that are being constructed. Water would be possibly a question in my mind for this one because it is in the rural water service territory. So it could be an impact to water, but that, again, won't be known until the final designs. So as planning commissioners, as city staff, when you make these decisions, that's the kind of thing questions you ask yourself. Would the preponderance of uses allow pose an undue burden on infrastructure? And I think this is a really good example of one that's pretty clear that stuff's in place. And it was this type of use was accounted for when those things were being put in place.
Mike, related to that, I've always assumed, and maybe now's the appropriate time to ask, but when the future land use map was designed, I assume that capacities were taken into account for certain things.
Well,
Or
you don't.
am I just implying
I don't
that?
think the answer. No. Well, the answer to that is no.
Okay.
When you're looking at future land use, typically what the question you're asking there is, what's the appropriate land use here, giving other land uses of it, and proximity to major transportation and infrastructure, but you're not designing the road improvements at that.
Okay.
You understand that you might show a land use along a rural section corridor, and this road can't possibly handle it, and there's no water or sewer. You understand that, but you also know that as the city grows, those utilities are expanded and improved as appropriate. And so that's not really the level of detail that you're
Got it. Okay.
looking at when you're doing a future land use map.
I mean, not to give that inappropriate gloss, though, when you do the comprehensive plan, you build into there some assumptions about future infrastructure. And what you're doing. So it's not like you don't consider whether or not it's possible to have extensions and those kinds of things, because the
Yeah.
comp plan does go through a lot of that.
Well, right, and it's the distinction between future land use and existing zoning is kind of the distinctions we're talking about now.
Right.
Okay, that's what you want in the future, but is now the time for that?
Right.
Okay.
And that's the question that Todd's asking. Is now the time? So if it
Okay.
was still rural section roads, everywhere, the answer might not be the same.
Thank you.
Other questions for Brad? Thank you, Brad. This matter is a public hearing, so anyone who would like to address the planning commission with regard to the rezoning, please approach the podium, give your name and address for the record.
Rosemary Mail, 37265 West 95th. I'm basically the southeast corner of 95th and Edgerton, the north neighbor. So probably a few things going around our heads a little bit. Why multifamily again? You've got, how many tracks? 3 tracks you've switched already? Why, if you're thinking about across from a logistics plant, why aren't you going more commercial buildings instead of a residential area across from logistics? That's the only thing that's kind of torn me. And then, I don't know what's going on with the water and the sewer system on Edgerton that's taken so freaking long to deal with. But can that water right now hold everything? Has Water District been contacted at all?
I can't answer that. That's not a question Mike can answer tonight. I don't know the answer.
It's not the city that
I don't
services,
know.
it's Water 7.
Right, it's rural water 7, same as our service. So that was one of my questions, is there lines there capable of such, are they in place at this point capable? Because isn't that part of the holdup to what's going on in Edgerton?
Well, no, so the holdup is getting that, the line needs relocated for some of the road work that's been done, and so getting that designed and planned through that process. It wasn't necessarily.
sewer
a capacity
situation?
issue. But certainly, coordination and verification from the rural district that any type of development that goes on here has to have, obviously, water and fire flow service and all that. That discussion needs to take place. Typically, it's a little premature when you rezone something, but it is something that would be a decision factor on rezoning something like this.
Well, and I think we've met with people already concerning our water retention issue that's coming on our land already, and we've never heard back from the city on that. And this is going to be another one, since there's already a water issue on that particular property that's been dammed up. So that's our other huge concern, is we haven't got the first one even addressed from the logistics plant, and now you wanted to turn the next one into something, and there is a water issue, retention issue coming on our land. And right now, there's a blockage of the dam. The bridge is blocked up on this particular piece of land that's not been, I don't believe it's been rectified. So there's some of that creek that goes through that whole section of land. There is a problem or situation already with water. But I would like a situation rectified soon from the city, or a response from us, because we had a meeting out on the land with people and nothing's been returned yet. So, and that's been a month or two. So that's my only holdup here, is there needs to be a better water retention if that gets passed. But I still just have a problem with multifamily again being brought in. It just feels like you're trashing up DeSoto instead of trying to get it classier.
I'm familiar, there is a water issue with some of the stormwater improvements that were constructed with Edgerton Road. I think I remember that being a topic. I'm not familiar with exactly what the issue is or why.
There's too much coming on our land right now.
Okay, so.
There's 3 gutters coming at us, and there was one before, and we've already got retention issues coming from Edgerton Road already.
Too much water, more
Too
water
much.
than was there. Okay. I'm unfamiliar with.
And there's a
the
culvert that
state of that.
not the current owner of this project, the subject land that you guys are talking about rezoning, but there was a culvert put in, to come across to our land also, that the previous owner was nice enough to put a concrete culvert at the divider of the land, but his side is dammed up pretty bad right now. So we don't really feel like when the rush comes out, we're going to get flooded again, and that's, it's never been addressed yet. So if something goes forward on this piece of land, I do want the city to really look at that situation, because it's a problem for us. I mean, we haven't got a lawyer involved, but it will get to a point that we got to have an engineer look at it on our side if we don't get any response from the city on this, because it's a problem. And I'm not for multifamily on that piece of property at all. I know change is coming, but I think there's a better fit than multifamily again. I mean, you've got Flint's, you got the one just past this section at 99th. You got another one up on Kill Creek, and you've passed 1 or 2 on 95th, closer to Lexington. So when's enough multifamily? Where's some R1 or where's some office situations going in instead? That's the big thing I would tell you to think about, because we were just a little bit disappointed when it came across that. And this developer, is he a developer, or is he just a single owner LLC that's never developed anything yet? Because his name was on nothing else at the state. Just something to think about.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the planning commission public hearing? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and matters before the commission.
I've got a question for Brad. when these properties are, when the rezoning is approved, does that alleviate the property owner from needing to meet the standards for runoff or fire, having a right fire flow or enough traffic capacity as he moves forward with his development?
Well, as I'd mentioned, that's the site planning process is where those things come into play. Now, if this developer just does nothing with this property, it just sits there like it is, there's no issues. Now, certainly, we'll have to look into what's happening with the grading issue and the water potential retention on the Mail property, but right now, there is no requirements. It's still RUR, it's a vacant piece of property. As long as it stays that way, there really isn't anything that needs to be done at this point.
Have the facilities in the Flint Industrial Park been required to, I know this isn't really your question, but maybe you're familiar. Have they been required to maintain existing runoff rates?
Yeah, now the Flint stuff
Yeah,
goes to
I
the,
can
to the
address it.
E,
Yeah,
to
there was a
the
very
west.
detailed, comprehensive drainage study done for that, as there would for any development on these properties would have that requirement, that they do a comprehensive drainage study to retain drainage runoff, peak runoffs to before or below previous development levels. The Flint property, 370 acres, did that. They've got a number of detention facilities in the western part of their property. They have diverted quite a bit of, I don't have the exact numbers, but there's quite a bit of less ground that flows toward Edgerton Road than did before because of the regrading activities that were gone. It's quite a big mitigation of that flow that came toward the east is now going toward the west.
Has anybody looked at the idea that maybe those facilities are not functioning yet? And
Certainly, a big, and I know we talked with Flint about temporary erosion control measures and runoff issues during construction, stormwater management, control management plans for during the construction activities. It's not uncommon to have issues like that. You do need, I mean, there inspections done after every rainfall event, and yeah, it's important to stay on top. And a lot of times we don't know what they are. We have to hear from the neighbors what their concerns are. And so, yeah, I'm not trying, there's nothing that discounting what the issues that they're having now. I mean, they're very possible that there's some blockage or drainage that needs to be, I'm just not dated, I'm just not familiar with where the status of that is, so we'll follow that.
yeah, okay.
I think a lot of the concerns that neighbors have, they're gonna be addressed on the site plan submittal with detention studies and if there is detention needed with the improvements, I mean, that'll all be shaken out on the site plan when that's submitted. I do know that, this property has been slated on the future land use plan for multifamily, so kind of the trend that the city wants to see.
I've got, if and when it gets to the point where we get the site plan, drainage issue should be addressed at that point. We had a similar issue down at south of 95th and Waverly where they had water runoff, caused neighbors problems. So.
Yeah, no doubt that will be fully vetted as part of the site plan of whatever eventually gets built here. I mean, to me, zoning doesn't mean that that's what's going to be built. Zoning is it an appropriate use for the property? And, I certainly understand the suggestion that perhaps what fronts this industrial area might be better for commercial. Maybe it'll develop that way, maybe it won't, but if it doesn't, is multifamily a better use there than, say, for example, single family, which would front Edgerton Road, that to me would be a much more difficult sell than it would be to do multifamily right next to the industrial. We always try to create some sort of a buffer between those. So, you know, in my mind, this is is not inappropriate use here. I don't know that it'll ever develop. I mean, just like any of these that we do rezonings on, maybe they develop, maybe they don't develop. Maybe we're granting rezonings to people who have no intention of ever building on it, but are gonna flip it to somebody else someday, and they're just think it's more valuable to them. But that's not our job. Our job is to determine whether that's an appropriate use. And certainly understand the comments about the infrastructure, that it may not be built out to completely build out a fully intensive multifamily development there, but they're not gonna build that unless that's there. So that's gonna be our job on the back end, is to make sure that we're not approving site plans that are gonna cause problems for the neighbors or the traffic or whatever else it may be. But that doesn't make it inappropriate as a use for this. You know, I don't think it's appropriate for a quarry. It may be appropriate for other uses, but this is the one that's in front of us. And so the question we have is this an appropriate use? That's my take. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, with what Roger said about all the other buffers, there is other single-family large lot subdivisions. I think this is a good buffer from the industrial buildings on the west side, multifamily, and then back to single-family. But with the R3 zoning, it does give the developer options. If they want to do single-family, they could still do single-family.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Would you mind? Thank you.
Sam Mail, 37265 West 95th Street. So I know you closed the hearing, but, so if you go R3, you have to go through, get it rezoned back to commercial if they want a commercial.
Any other change of use that's
Right.
not
You gotta
permitted.
get it rezoned.
would have to be rezoning. Now, that's what I think, the comments have been that in an R3 zoning, you can also do R1 and R2. So you could do a downed development of housing.
Well, you're not gonna get single family there.
I would think not.
No,
Seems
ain't no
unlikely, right?
I mean, in a multifamily to my place, would just destroy it. The value, absolutely destroy it. Then demographics is another issue. I mean, what kind of people are gonna live across the street from an industrial park? They're not gonna go to be your office lawyer type people, driving in somewhere to their good jobs. And the trash could be another issue. I've already seen more trash than I have in years past with all the construction activity. But it is what it is.
Thank you.
And I understand, the city's gotta do what's gotta do. So, and then if we can talk about water retention and the asphalt on the complex, that will be the issue.
I'm sure there will be issues with
Yeah,
that.
and the asphalt, the Flint development, I have no idea where that asphalt's draining, but I got a pretty good idea. Cause it's not in yet. So, that's where I stand.
Thank you.
All right, good day.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Motions?
Chairman, you might close the public hearing.
I did, actually, but I
Oh, you did?
did allow for an additional public comment. But to make it perfectly clear, the public hearing is now closed.
Okay.
Anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we recommend a rezoning of 9675 and 9735 Edgerton Road from RUR to R3.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Huggins, Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Manson. Motion carries.
Thank you. Looks like we have no old business on the agenda tonight, but we do have new business. Item 7A, consider final plat for Anderson Estates. And as announced, we have several that need to recuse ourselves. Linda, would you mind?
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Edgar, you'll note that the commissioners have left. Thank you. Brad, do you want to give us an overview, please?
All right, thank you, Commissioner. What you have before you is the final plat for Anderson Estates. The comments that came up during the preliminary plat discussion at the last meeting, which I did include the preliminary plat in your packet, as far as what the final plat should reflect, was the inclusion of a statement about Lot 10. The owner of that tract will maintain Tract A, which has the detention area for this property. Also, the access easement has been added between lots 8 and 9. The storm and sewer easement is also shown that goes between lots 6 and 7 and drains to the south. And then also there is a utility easement between lots 4 and 5 for stormwater. So all the items that were raised by Joe Johnson as far as his review with the areas that the city needs to have access to or ability to perform maintenance functions on some of these areas have been included. And then also the notation of the Lot 10 is responsible for the maintenance of the detention tract A. So with that, it does meet the consistency and the intent of the preliminary plat. So staff is recommending approval of the final plat for Anderson Estates. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? Commissioners?
Nope. Kind of kicked it around a lot at the last one.
That's
So.
fine. Okay, I guess we need a motion then.
Make a motion to approve item 7A Eagle Creek final plat as written.
Second.
Edgar, roll call, please.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins, Lane,
Yes.
Maddock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Get them out of timeout.
Get the other half of our people out.
We really took a long time. I hope you guys didn't start before we came back here.
Didn't take long to turn that one down, did it?
Okay. Item 7B, consider final replat for the carriage houses number 13.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a process now we've gone through 13 times. The replat for carriage houses number 13. As you know, initially, they have to come in and plat the property, and then once the walls are built, each individual unit is resurveyed and submitted for a replat that also now allows them to sell the property. So there really is no change from the previous plat that was approved by the Planning Commission, other than you now have dimensions for the interior walls within this location. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Is this their last one?
There might be another one for the track to the east. Now they're going through a flood study and jumping through some hoops to see if they can get another building in there. But if that doesn't work out, then this will be the last one.
This isn't relevant, but is this the first time they've split one of those units and had two small units in there, like 12 and 13?
Yeah, I haven't seen them little ones like that before.
Me either.
Yeah, they've always had a common spine down the middle, so I don't, yeah, I kind of saw that too, but
They're
that's,
smaller than anything else they've had.
I did inquire about the prices of some of these units, and the small ones are going for $100,000. It's just shocking, but anyway.
It is just amazing to me how successful that.
Yeah.
It's truly unbelievable.
Yeah, and they started, Mike, in 2006, 2007, right in
My whole
the,
career here has been
But-
this. This is all I've done.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they started right before the economic downturn, and of course, they rode that out.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, boy.
Should have invested in that.
Doing
right?
rather well.
Well,
Wish I'd have thought of it.
We were just glad to get that old landscape
as
business
you can
out of
see,
there.
it's kind of an expensive process, so.
Yeah.
I wish we had a more efficient way to do these kinds of things, but we don't. I mean, it's an expensive deal.
you're right, it's what you gotta do, you know, it's part of the deal, so.
Any other questions for Brad? Matters before the planning commission? Discussion, motions?
I motion that we forward on to city council for approval of the final plat of carriage houses number 13, Tract L.
I believe we actually approve it, right?
Oh,
This
do
doesn't
we?
go to-
Yeah,
It's an
yeah, you
approval.
approve the
Yeah.
plat, the council accepts easements and rights away, which there really aren't any on this, but we always bring that form anyway.
No worries.
I motion some.
No, you did a great job. I appreciate it. There's been a motion and a second for approval of the plat.
Who seconded it?
I did.
All right.
Manson,
Did you get that?
Yeah,
Okay. Roll call.
Manson,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, any other business not on the agenda or general complaints you'd like to lodge? This is a great time to do it.
They've been moving a lot of dirt down there at the old storage building place. What,
Yeah, what's going on?
is there not supposed to be any kind of permit or plan or?
Well, they have submitted a grading permit, so, they have
Yes.
submitted a grading permit,
Soil
but
disturbance permit.
But there's been no
Digging for
site plan.
Foundation for something.
There's no foundations. They're just raising the land to make it.
Well, they raised it up and then they went right beside it and then the new area they've been working on, they dug down. It looks like nice and flat for a foundation. They've dropped down considerably.
Yeah, they've not submitted, and you're right, that's a commercial property. I think it's zoned commercial. It might be zoned
No, I think it's R1, actually,
I'm
right
just
through
kinda
there.
concerned about the power line, cause they're raising that land up, but the power lines haven't raised up any.
Well, that storage facility used to be there, maybe it is.
No,
No, I think it's R1, it was a
It's
non-conforming
Really?
The,
use.
oh, you mean the slab that thing, was- yeah, the slab that the storage facility's on, it's underneath all of that.
Yep.
They never did take
Yeah,
that
I
out.
mean, the only permit we've seen on is that land disturbance, the fill permit, and the floodplain, it's in the floodplain. A floodplain development permit. And the erosion
I get all
control.
kinds of questions about it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've heard no speculation. I mean, we've been talking to 3 or 4 different owners over
Is it
time.
Dustin the one that has that now?
I'm sorry.
Does Dustin have
Yeah, I
that?
think, or a group he's affiliated with. You know, I think the hope is one day it could be a commercial pad site, but for now, they're just filling it.
For now, they're just shuffling dirt. Moving it around.
Pushing dirt, yep.
Is there a special use permit that we'll be seeing on this brewery that they're putting downtown? Anything's been submitted
I
on
don't
that?
believe so. It's allowed by right as far as a restaurant use or that serves alcoholic beverages. You're making me, the memory banks, we did go through a process where we updated
And we rezoned it
the code itself where what alcoholic beverages could be served in certain districts. And but I don't think there'll be, we did have a special use permit process for allowing auto sales.
Yeah.
Because at one time that was part of that potential use, but as far as a brewery itself,
So
I think it's
they've
a
had
lot.
an appropriate zone probably for that. Okay.
They're supposed to open into May, right? That's what I
I
heard.
don't know, they've been working like crazy there. I just,
Well, that's what we heard, but then on Facebook, she put into May.
They're gonna have to hurry.
Well, they've been working. Who knows? This summer.
And then when's the projected opening for for Edgerton Road? Where are they at on that?
Edgerton Road, at the south end?
Yeah.
So it is open down to 103rd. KDOT's working on 103rd. The next phase is for the segment between Astor Parkway and Edgerton to be open by Memorial.
Okay.
And then for Edgerton to Evening Star, they're projecting December 31st, 2024.
So at least when school starts next year, there will be another way for workers to get to the plant other than Lexington Avenue.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I understand that's been a challenge.
It has.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We're adjourned.
Did you see it? I showed it to you. Capri Supply.
Yeah.
Yeah, see you next time.
So